All right, it is time now to talk about one of the most interesting prospects in this draft, a player who was mocked to the Eagles at 32 by Daniel Jeremiah in his recent mock, and that is Texas A&M edge rusher Shemar Stewart. We're going to talk about the potential Eagles fit. We're going to get Fran Duffy's scouting report in a minute, Zach Berman, but very quickly, what do you make of the prospect of the Eagles using their first-round pick on Shemar Stewart?
I like the idea of getting a tools-up edge rusher. I'm not as bullish on the player right now than the prospect, and so this is one where you really need to trust your scouts. Does he have the makeup to become what can the tools turn him into the player that you think he can be? Because you see these tools and you're like, you can't get this at 32 typically, but then you see the production and you're like, are you really spending 32 on this player?
And I think even more than trusting your scouts, it would mean trusting your player development plan.
Yes.
And the Eagles do have a pretty good track record on that front in recent history with their edge rushers. Let's find out what Fran Duffy thinks about Shemar Stewart.
All right, time to talk through Texas A&M pass rusher Shemar Stewart. And this is a guy that absolutely looks the part. Former 5-star and #1 defensive end recruit coming out of high school. Goes to Texas A&M, spends 3 years with the Aggies, and now here he is getting ready to jump into the NFL. Let's get into the bio here a little bit. Primarily used off the edge, outside the tackle. Very few reps where he kicked inside. He did it at times on pass rush downs, but most of his time was spent out wide. Now, when you look at what are the strengths here? What are the positives in the profile for Shemar Stewart? I mentioned the body type. He looks like Tarzan. He's got outstanding length, a near 85-inch wingspan. He played at over 280 pounds, got down to 267 for the combine, and he said in Indianapolis, I've got the ability to get down to 250 if you need me, or I can play close to 290. So that versatility, that is something that can be valuable for teams because, number one, you've got the ability to do different things for a defensive line coach, but also for all the different teams, you might be able to envision multiple paths to success for this player. What I like him best, line him up out wide, let him use that explosiveness that he showed off at the combine. We'll get into some of these numbers here, but show off that explosiveness and just be a pocket crusher. Line up with a runway and just vault into the offensive tackle and collapse the pocket. That is where he is at his best right now. But when you're looking at, I mentioned the combine testing, 267 pounds. He ran a 4.59 in the 40-yard dash. That's not as freaky as expected. I think some people are expecting a little bit of a better number there, but still really impressive for that size. What was most impressive was the jumps. 40 inches in the vert, 131 inches in the broad jump. That's nearly 11-foot standing broad jump for a guy that's 267 pounds. That is alien qualities there from this guy, from Shemar Stewart. Now, that is really exemplary of his power, his explosiveness, and you do see that on film. His ability to close is really impressive. His straight line juice, that ability to get from A to B, especially late in the down, some really good flashes of his motor in pursuit. And that's going to really, that's that catnip for a coach, right? And when you see that level of pursuit from a guy that big and that explosive. But really, the big thing as well, his ability to defend the run, he's very stout. He's really strong. And so he's both strong and powerful. He holds the point really well. He is consistently graded out well as a run defender. When you use a service like a Pro Football Focus, he always grades out well from that standpoint. But let's get into the negatives. And really, the biggest negative, the biggest thing that he's got hanging around his neck right now, a lack of production. And it's not just in the pass game, but in the run game as well. We'll start in the pass game. Just 4.5 career sacks, 1.5 each year that he was on campus. Obviously, you want to see a better number than that, but it's not just the sack production. His pressure rate was pretty low. The win rate was pretty low. When you're looking at the run game, the number of run stops, and a run stop is defined as, was it an unsuccessful run for the offense? If it's 3rd and 1, were they able to get the first down? Or if it was 1st and 10, were they able to get more than 5 yards? That's a successful play for the offense. How often was he able to create an unsuccessful play? It was at a 3.7% clip. That is the second lowest of any defensive end drafted in the last 10 years, based off the numbers that I've seen charted from PFF. And so I think when you're looking at Shemar Stewart, this is a guy that's got all the physical tools, especially from a straight line standpoint, to be able to go from A to B and push the pocket. He's really strong, just doesn't find the football. So you get into why. Well, what are the reasons there? A couple things stand out on film. Number one, his block recognition is not great in the run game. Doesn't always see things too early in the down. Number two, I think he's got to get better with his hands at the top of the rush. Too often, he's just trying to run by offensive tackles. He needs to do a better job of understanding How do I win at the top with my hands? How do you set up your bull rush? All of those different things to better create more effective rushes. And then number 3, and this is something I don't think can be corrected. He's got some lateral stiffness to him that shows up time and time again, not just when he's trying to turn the corner as a rusher off the edge, but also when he has to break down and finish as a tackler. When you talk about, all right, well, how come he doesn't have all the production there? He's got a really, really high missed tackle rate. We're talking north of 20% missed tackle rate, which is an exorbitant number for a defensive player. And so when you're looking at that, well, why is that? If you have some stiffness to you, you aren't able to break down and finish all the time. That can lead to the lack of production we're seeing with Shemar Stewart. And I don't know that that's something that can always get corrected. You can start to see things faster. You can get better with your hands. That athletic limitation, that could be an issue for him moving forward. So if you don't get the other 2 things corrected, that's something that will always kind of hang there in the background. So at the end of the day, when you're looking at Shemar Stewart, I see a player that, again, I like him best personally. Line him up off the edge. Let him be that pocket pusher early on, probably off the bench early in year 1. I don't think you're going to be counting on him to start as a rookie. So year 1, get him off the edge, let him push the pocket. Or maybe you're asking him, hey, let's actually put more weight on you and you become more of an interior type of player. And now if that's the case, though, that's going to impact the draft value. So while there are multiple paths to success for this player, I do think that you have to talk about what are the chances that you're able to get the return on investment for his talent. We know the talent's there. It's about trying to turn that into production and honestly disruption. Just not enough of that consistently on film with the player. But I do understand the upside.
All right, Zach. So you have the story of Shemar Stewart. What do you make of a guy who athletically is as ridiculous and athletic a prospect as we have seen at that position in some time? And then production-wise, there's the run stuff that Fran talked about. And then in terms of getting after the passer, I mean, 3 years in a row of 1.5 sacks. I mean, even Danielle Hunter had 3 sacks in a season, and that's the one that everybody points to. That is like unprecedented for a player who turns out to be an All-Pro or a Pro Bowler. Would you make that gamble if you were the Eagles?
It's a great question, and this is one I've debated. And I have to remind myself, when you're talking about the 32nd overall pick, you're not getting a perfect prospect.
Yeah.
You're not getting Myles Garrett. Like, if someone had those tools and the production, he's not available at 32, right? This probably goes back to Nolan Smith. The reason why Nolan Smith was there at 31 is because you didn't see the type of production. Now, the size here with the athletic tools, if he's there, teams are seriously having questions about the type of football player that he is. The Eagles like to take these types of upside gambles. I'm not enthused by the player that I've seen. And I think if the draft was on February 1st or Super Bowl Sunday, then you're probably not as excited.
That would have been a lot of work for the Eagles to do. Yeah.
But you're probably not as excited about him as you were after the combine when you saw what he tested. And I always wonder, like, are you changing your draft grades that much based on the athletic testing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would take some hubris for a team to draft Shemar Stewart in the first round and think we are the ones who can get the production out of him. But I think the Eagles are an organization like that. I think they believe in their player development staff. I think you look at how much better Nolan Smith got this year. I think you look at how good Jalex Hunt got by the end of his rookie season as a third-round pick who was an Ivy League safety 2 years ago, right? So I think the Eagles might be willing to take on this gamble. It would depend on when it was. Maybe they would move down a little bit if he's on the board. I don't know. But certainly this is a position that they prioritize. And if you tell Howie Roseman there's a 20% chance this guy turns into one of the best edge rushers in the league, I think he's going to want to take that bet.
It's a fair point, and I'm glad you mentioned Smith and Hunt because those are two players who were toolsed up as well.
Right.
But
maybe having those two guys means you don't need to take a gamble on a guy like Shemar Stewart.
But like when I spoke earlier about listening to your scouts, those are two players who the Eagles felt the intangible characteristics were strong for both of them. Like the personality, the work ethic, things of that nature. They felt that this is someone who's going to get better. And so this is where you really need to say, is this a player who has those tools, as you said, to maximize what the player development program's giving you? Or is this, for lack of a better term, like a 5-star personality who's going to come in and say, I'm big and I can run fast and that's all I need to do? Because we saw at Texas A&M that wasn't good enough. And if that wasn't good enough at Texas A&M, it's not going to be good enough in the NFC East.
All right. Well, you can check out all of Fran Duffy's scouting reports if you become a diehard on allphly.com. You can check out the PHLY Eagles show every weekday at 2 o'clock. And let us know in the comments after you like and subscribe, by the way. Do your job because we're doing ours. And then let us know you're on the clock, 32. You're Howie Roseman. Would you pull the trigger on Shemar Stewart?